In the Gambia, tensions at sea are turning violent in a standoff between local fishermen and foreign-owned trawlers. One local industry official called the growing number of incidents a sea war. Desperate local fishermen are attacking foreign trawlers and even turning on each other over the waters of West Africa. Fishermen accuse the trawlers of encroaching into unauthorized areas off Gambia's coast and sabotaging their equipment. A warning, our next report contains images of injuries that you may find disturbing.
We are going to call the authority.
Off Gambia's coast,
Try to go up. Here is not your zone.
local fishermen are locked in a running battle with foreign-owned trawlers for control.
You destroy our nation.
A fight fueled by dwindling stocks and global demand, with devastating consequences for some of those caught in the crossfire. These injuries are the result of an arson attack on an Egyptian-owned vessel in July last year. Both men are Gambian crew members.
I feel the heatness. The heatness that I feel. It's not acidic air. The heatness.
Kausu Lee was left with severe burns and now fears for his future.
I move here. I go to hustle for my family. I have this kind of accident. Yeah, I think my life is finished.
Incidents like this are causing deep concern, with locals now turning on each other at sea as competition grows over these waters. And who should be allowed to fish here?
I think there should be a civilized way to handle that thing than to jump in one another on, in the sea waters to fight like that. It's very dangerous. So all these things is happening. It's a sea war.
Local fishermen believe their livelihoods are now under threat and have no choice but to act. They say industrial trawlers are fishing closer and closer to shore, violating their waters. The Enduro brothers claim to have lost more than half of their nets in recent years and blame the government's decision to reopen its waters to foreign-owned vessels in 2017.
This new government, these trawlers are rampant here. Before they were upside 15-20 kilometers up, but now they used to come up to 3-4 kilometers down here fishing. This is why they are destroying our nets.
Gambia's government has been trying to do more to calm the waters. It now requires foreign vessels operating offshore to carry a quota of local crew. It's also using the Navy to crack down on illegal fishing, but it's poorly resourced and relies on international support. Local fishermen say the government must do more to protect their rights and their futures, as this fight over Gambia's waters threatens to pull their communities apart.
All right, for more on this, let's bring in Doctor Ifesinachi Okafor-Yarwood, a lecturer in sustainable futures at the University of St. Andrews in Scotland. She's also a Pew Marine Fellow. Hello and welcome to the program, madam. So, first off, tell us more about what's behind this growing sea war in the Gambia's waters.
Thank you, Eddie, for having me. I think to make better sense of what is causing what we're now seeing as sea war in the Gambian waters, we have to reflect on the significance of fisheries resources for the Gambians and people in Western Central Africa. Fish is a very important source of food. It is also an important source of protein for coastal communities. And more relatedly to livelihoods, it's a very important source of livelihood for millions of people in West Africa. It therefore then means that anything that threatens this sustainability is a threat not only to the food security, but also to the economic security of the people. And unfortunately, in the West African regions, we have the impact of marine pollution, including those resulting from plastic pollution, oil pollution, exacerbating depletion of fish stock. We also, unfortunately, have the impact of climate change contributing significantly to depletion, to the point that certain research have shown that unless fisheries governance improve in West Africa, by 2050, the fisheries production is likely to reduce by up to 23%, with countries like Ghana, Nigeria, and Cote d'Ivoire being affected by up to 63%. And of course, there is a threat of overfishing, and more specifically, those resulting from illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, primarily caused by distant water fishing vessels or industrial vessels. In the Gambia, as well as all these issues that I've highlighted, there's also the threat of pollution resulting from the activities of fisheries, what is it called, fish meal industries in the Gambia. And so the fact that a lot of the waste products that is produced from the fish meal industry also goes to the oceans, unfortunately, all these things together exacerbate the sustainability of fish stock, meaning that the fish that local fishers would historically rely on for their livelihoods is depleted, and they have less and less fish. And the fact that they continue to see industrial vessels competing with them for this limited space, and sometimes doing this by encroaching into the inshore areas that has been reserved for the artisanal fishers, is what, in my mind, and based on the existing research, is what is causing it. But secondly, also because of what they see as inaction by the government. Remember that for the first instance, for the industrial vessels to be able to come to the Gambia, someone gives them that authorization. And so sometimes they are there because they have either a fisheries partnership agreement with the government of the Gambia, or due to having paid licensing fees. And so the frustration from the people is what is sort of making them respond in this way.
Right. I mean, you're right. The frustration definitely very clear, which is what has been leading to the so-called sea war, tensions between local fishermen and, foreign fishermen, so to speak, right? The issue is also that the local fishermen are saying that foreign trawlers now come just a few kilometers from shore, which really begs the question, isn't the law about who can fish and where clear enough, or is enforcement simply too weak? Is that the issue here?
The law is clear for many countries, including the Gambia, and I think you've actually said it all. The issue is a problem of enforcement. A lot of the countries in West and Central Africa, including the Gambia, have limited monitoring, surveillance, and control. So it becomes a case of having a law and then not being able to fully implement the law. And the people are now beginning to act as vigilantes because, one, they feel that the government are not doing something about it. But also, secondly, some of them feel that there is some sort of element of corruption, that people have been paid to turn a blind eye. Because even with the limitations of our navies, our Coast Guard, our fisheries authorities, surely the close proximity of these activities to shore would mean that it should be easier for them to see these vessels and then do something about their activities. But so for the fisher folks, who are now taking action, it could be that for them, they feel that these industrial vessels are continuing to incur into areas that is reserved for them because of some sort of corrupt practices that is happening. But there are definitely challenges with monitoring, surveillance, and control in the Gambia, as well as in select countries in West Africa.
The Gambia is relatively, small country, but relatively stable, right? So if this is even happening in the Gambia, I mean, what about countries like, Somalia, arguably less stable country with an even longer coastline?
Illegal fishing is something that is, in Somalia, for example, has been traced and connected to the threats of piracy and robbery at sea. So historically, at the fall of the Barre regime in the early 1990s, I believe 1994, illegal fishing by foreign vessels and illegal toxic waste dumping, by foreign vessels has some of the examples that has been cited as justification for piracy and robbery at sea. And then if you come to the Gulf of Guinea, specifically in Nigeria's Niger Delta, even though this is not necessarily linked to illegal fishing, but you can also see the connection between degradation of the ocean's environment and the deprivation and the sort of helplessness by coastal communities feeling that their government is not doing something, and the militancy that they're morphed to pirates and robbery in that part of the world. And so this is not the first time we're seeing a connection between frustration, sort of a feeling of selflessness or helplessness, and people taking actions that inadvertently have a negative implication on the security of their state, but also on their own personal security, because sometimes if you're trying to attack vessels, you might also end up hurting yourself in the process.
Right. I mean, look, from all that I've gathered from what you're saying, you seem to be suggesting that some foreign trawlers don't necessarily stick to the rules of engagement. And again, it just seems to me that we're describing a systematic and widespread theft, so to speak, of Africa's fish stocks and marine resources. Who really is profiting from all of this?
Unfortunately, the people that are profiting are the distant water fishing vessels, the distant water fishing nations. In 2017, and I'll read from a paper, a research that was published in 2017 noted that 6 West African countries, Mauritania, Senegal, the Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, and Sierra Leone, lost $2.3 billion annually to illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. Obviously, the clandestine nature of this threat makes it almost difficult for us to actually ascertain the actual amount. But if this figure based on reconstruction is what they are telling us, it tells you that actually the financial cost of illegal fishing is significantly high. In 2016, a report from the World Bank noted, and they were writing in 2016, that in the last decade, that the income of artisanal fishers in West Africa have reduced by 40%. If they were writing in 2016 and saying that, what is it now, especially if you take into account the impact of pollution and the impact of climate change? So essentially, and unfortunately, the people that are benefiting are the distant water fishing vessels. The people that are benefiting are the distant water fishing nations, such as those from Asia, specifically China, such as those from entities like the European Union, who are either signing sustainable fisheries partnership agreement with countries in West Africa, and in the case of countries like China and South Korea, they are benefiting through their fisheries, different agreement, but also fisheries licensing agreement that allows them to plunder the resources in exchange for peanut, because what they pay in comparison to what they get is unfortunately very small in comparison to the actual compensation they pay to the government.
Right. I mean, it's interesting what you're saying. So on paper, it seems like this is supposed to be sustainable and supposed to be benefiting all sides, but what actually comes out of it is not that. It's actually far from that. And this is exactly why we're now seeing violent confrontations at sea, in some cases arson attacks and rammings. At what point does this evolve from a fisheries issue to a security crisis?
It is already a security crisis. If you look at different conversations at the UN security levels or UN Security Council level, actually this year, the UN Secretary General talked about a more holistic approach to addressing maritime security threats. And he highlighted specifically the root causes approach. In 2023, the UN Peacebuilding Commission talked about maritime security in the Gulf of Guinea, of which the Gambia is a country in the Gulf of Guinea. And they also talked about the root causes approach. They are recognizing that to be able to solve security threats at sea, including threats like piracy and robbery at sea, we also need to look at threats to livelihoods of coastal communities, threats to livelihood of millions of Africans that rely on ocean's resources. And so if you're not addressing that, unfortunately, people would end up becoming hopeless prey in the hands of criminal network. And sometimes it might manifest by taking advantage of their knowledge of the sea to act as informant, to act as navigators. And in extreme cases, as we're seeing in relation to irregular migration to Europe, some of them actually abandon fishing because there's nothing else for them to do and risk their life to go through Europe, through the Mediterranean. So already it is a security issue, and certain governments have already actually stipulated it as a maritime security threat.
So solutions are definitely needed because there's so much at stake here. We're talking about jobs, food, the environment is even affected. What practical steps can countries like the Gambia take right now to protect its waters and its people and end this cycle of conflict, you think?
Well, in 2015, in response to overfishing, the previous government of the Gambia placed a ban on industrial foreign vessels fishing in the country. In 2017, this ban was lifted. As of July this year, the Fisheries Partnership Agreement between the Gambia and the European Union has become dormant because it has expired. Perhaps the Gambia can take cues from Senegal, who failed, or should I say, refused to renew its Fisheries Partnership Agreement when it expired earlier this year or last year, but not renegotiating the agreement this year because they wanted to have a stronger policy on addressing this threat. So perhaps they need to place pause or sort of pause on the agreement to agree on what better way to ensure that they're able to monitor, survey, and control the activities of the vessels they are licensing. Another way could be, thankfully, as of 15th of September this year, the global fisheries subsidies agreement have come into force. This is the one negotiated through the WTO, and perhaps countries can collectively come together and walk the talk on actually putting an end to harmful subsidies, which has in the past allowed vessels to go to countries like the Gambia and others in West Africa to plunder their resources. Right. Another thing could be for the Gambia and their partners to revisit this whole idea of fish meal industry and the way that they operate. Because apart from the fact that vessels also engage in illegal fishing, there's also a problem of overexploitation, taking fish from human to feed fish so that you can feed human. It's very problematic. And so I think there's a need for really broader conversation around transparency, around equity, and around fair sharing of benefits from the fisheries agreement that the Gambia is able to, the money that is able to generate from fisheries agreement or licensing its vessels or licensing agreement with other countries. Sorry.
Right. Dr. Ifesinachi Okafor-Yarwood, lecturer in Sustainable Futures at the University of St. Andrews. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.